Where's the line? Complete. Cool. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. 3 mistakes that side government made, right? First, their conception of who the reader is fundamentally wrong. Because all 3 speeches run on some sort of an assumption that most people who will be reading this kind of content are people of the minority community. Which is why all their arguments are, oh, these people know, oh, these people don't need hope, oh, these people don't need to be lied to. I think Shruti breaks that assumption in her first minute by explaining how fiction has a very simple disarming tool. Members of all communities are able to understand, access, and believe the understanding of these books because they are not as visceral as real life news. They are able to understand and internalize these emotions and understandings. Tejas then went on to explain on a further basis, the idea for the disarming nature quite simply means that a racist parent from Texas won't stop his kid from reading this book because he won't view it as propaganda. This very fundamentally means that the ideas of, oh, black people know their own oppression is not the entirety of the debate. The debate encapsulated 2 kinds of communities, both majority and minority. So they would like you to believe that the clash of this debate is, do you want hope or do you want viscerality? Do you want to make the world a certain way or do you want to view the world a certain way? But those aren't the clashes, right? I'll tell you what the clashes are. The clashes are when you break down this debate into the kind of communities that exist. The first is majoritarian communities who are reading this kind of content, and the second is minority communities when they are reading this kind of content. Let's deal with minority because the crux of their argument is this, right? They say these people know their oppression, we don't need to tell them. Sure, but they also know hope. Why is it that a Dalit man has to be lied to, has to be showed beautiful, but it's a beautiful utopian societies for him to have hope? I'm unsure of how hope is a unique argument on their side of the world when Shruti and Tejas have explained to you that the idea of reading a protagonist in a dystopian society being able to garner collectivization and change essentially means that the ability to make change in their world exists. So at best, their best case of hope is unequal, it's symmetric, both sides exist. But on our side, we're able to prove to you how the harms of showing viscerality or the benefits of showing to society that these kind of a world exists is far outweighing any kind of argument that they can raise. The second clash that exists when it comes to minority communities is our argument of an obligation existing, right? We quite simply explained to you that the idea is this, right? The only reason we know tales of the oppression that minority communities have gone through is because of people who told that story before, which means there's an obligation on you as an author to tell that story further. I think that argument gets no counter from either of their 3 speeches, right? Because the idea is quite simple. Obligation exists irrespective of the outcome. So at any case, our obligation argument trumps any kind of impact argument that they want to run. Which means if the debate is simply about minorities, we've shown to you that their benefit is symmetric, their harm is unique, and their obligation is unfulfilled, which is why they lose the debate. But let's talk about the larger spectrum of this debate. All communities who are reading this kind of content, right? Because they want to show to you that hope should exist, that a black man should be able to see that a better life can exist. I'm unsure how that is useful, right? Let's take their argument at their best. Sure, maybe a Dalit man or a black man views this kind of content, believes that a world can exist, but then doesn't understand the kind of fucked up reality that exists, the kind of change that is needed, the kind of collectivization that is needed. Because if hope exists, then how does the kind of collectivization happen, right? Because they needed to mechanize how when you believe in a utopian society existing, they're able to achieve that. If he believes that and then goes out tomorrow on the street and gets shot, I'm unsure what the benefit is on either side of the world. But let's talk about what should happen and what ought to happen and how we've explained it, right? We've explained to you very simple concepts. We told you we want to break confirmation bias. When white people or white kids are able to read these kind of books and are able to understand that a villainized community is not often in the wrong, that they're villainized for a certain reason, that creates a massive change. It's quite as simply as interpreting data in a different manner. Today, if a white kid is told that, oh, 55% of black youth are arrested, someone who hasn't read this kind of content will assume that's because they commit more crimes. But someone who has read this kind of content will think maybe because there's more policing in that area, maybe because they're arrested more easily. The kind of benefit of doubt that happens in society because of the breaking of confirmation bias happens uniquely when you have this kind of fictional content telling people how society is fucked up, how the government isn't to be trusted as a big brother and is out there to get the little guy. All these kind of notions can never happen on their side with the majority community because they are living in a privileged bubble. They have confirmation bias. They do not know these things exist. Half of the white people won't have this video of George Floyd being killed on a street because that's the kind of confirmation bubble and information asymmetry they live in. Which means at best in their side, half the community has some hope, but the rest of them is doing jack shit to change the fucked up society we live in. On the contrary, on our side of the world, we've explained to you how these kind of people who live in privileged bubbles need their bubbles to be broken down and they have no argument to counter that. Which means quite simply, the argument is not hope versus shock value. It's that hope exists, but a shock value is needed to break this privilege bubble that prevents people from making a change. That's how you break the clash in this debate, right? And don't fall into the misconception of trying to say, oh, a black man knows the kind of oppression he goes through, because he knows that, but he also knows a better world can exist, which means either of the sides are inexclusive, which means you need to see what the kind of impact a side can generate. The only impact you've had is from our side, because you've broken down confirmation biases. They've done nothing. Very proud to oppose.
Harry Potter is a white boy because he's written by a white transphobic woman. If you want to see an Indian writer create an Indian Harry Potter, you have to let people from marginalized communities actually write their dystopia. Anyway, a couple of things that proposition gives to us in this speech. But firstly, I want to talk about limited representation, right? Because as we mentioned in our framing, there are already such few authors from marginalized communities, right? So who writes these stories of suffering? The stories of suffering that we see around us are written by the individuals that live at the absolute echelon of the societal hierarchy. These people don't really know what suffering looks like, which is why most representations of suffering in fiction seem artificial prima facie. Secondly, they tell us you get to see what happiness looks like, that's why you should opt into a utopia. I promise you all women can visualize what their life without threat to sexual assault would look like, but I cannot promise you that all men understand and realize the degree to which every woman lives in fear of what sexual assault in her life can potentially look like. Then, the third thing we want to talk about is in terms of hope and creation of hope and why that is so phenomenal. Like I mentioned, it is actually incredible to have real hope in your life. However, when your everyday life never matches up to that picture perfect idea that you had in your head, that effectively makes you feel worse every single day of your life. You want to talk about a black man living equally with a white man, about a Dalit boy going ahead and owning land, except the real life of young Dalit boys in India is that if you drink water from your Brahminical teacher's water bottle, you will get beaten to death even if you are only a 6-year-old, and that is exactly what needs to be represented through fiction in a manner that is easily palatable and accessible to all individuals. Nobody wants to watch the video of George Floyd getting murdered. We are uncomfortable when we discuss concentration camps and the Nazis. I think it's significantly easier to talk about what genocidal maniacs look like in the context of Voldemort than it is to actually discuss Hitler and the semantics of propaganda that led an entire country to exterminate 6 million individuals across the world, right? They then want to talk to you about how authority can be challenged on both sides of the house. Yet, in a utopian fiction, there is no challenge to authority that happens. You are effectively watching the happily ever after. The main conflict of the story is over, you have achieved perfection, and that perfection is the only thing you get to see in utopian fiction. We tell you that you can go ahead and challenge the authority. We tell you that the Big Brother can in fact be wrong. Governments deserve to be questioned. There should be protests. There should be riots to effectively bring about change, particularly when it means the rights of marginalized communities is what is at stake here. We tell you that oh, and the final thing that they then mention is that you effectively create a reliance that someone will come in and save you. Guys, every time you watch Avengers, you're Iron Man, yeah? You're not a New York citizen waiting to be saved by someone. When you watch fiction, you are the hero. It doesn't matter what your real life actually looks like. You are the protagonist. You're changing the world. You're saving lives. And that is exactly the kind of hope we believe we want to instill in the lives of individuals of marginalized communities. Incredibly proud to take them.
Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Shruti, sorry, yaar, speeches are kind of boring. Like, you need to prove why things are true. You can't just say, oh my god, you know what? This is what happens. There's a hero, they're going to save us. But that's actually a reality I'm going to believe in. I'm actually not going to get a courage to now go and topple government. For any reason why A, people feel like this is a reality can represent. B, how is it actually going to materialize? In terms of materialization, you know what? We talk about gerrymandering, we talk about redlining, etc. We'll explain to children in young adult and children fiction how actually policies effectively interact with the world. These are damn boring stories. I'm not sure why children read those books in the first place. I'm really not sure how actually communicate to children what is structural issue that cause the problem that they face. Second is very unclear. A, whether they go ahead with any understanding or not, because most of the books that they mention, there's this one bad guy. Look, when I'm reading Harry Potter, I know Voldemort is a bad guy. I don't really know he's making a genocidal camp. All of them are, let's say, neo-Nazi or representative neo-Nazis, etc. I'm really not sure a 9-year-old kid or a 12-year-old kid or even a 15-year-old kid is seeing that messaging away from that book. At that point, what exactly are your benefits? Note, at best, tell me, we have shock value. We'll actually get people to interact with the media. The issue over here is twofold. Firstly, by shock value, at best, you'll get attention. What we do is very simple. If your reality is bad, we kind of recognize that. And then you go and read a book and you kind of feel bad. You know what, man, you got to read that shit over here as well. You probably dropped the book, yeah? You want to read the book to feel happy. At the end of the day, you're tired. You probably came back from school or you came back from office, tired. You're looking for some entertainment. That's why you're watching sports, that's why you're watching movies, etc. When a book reinforces your negativity, I'm not very sure if you continue reading that book or not. I think the question then becomes this. Why do you read utopian fiction? You probably just read it both ways as happier. I'm not even making any complex arguments over here. It's not that, you know what, somehow they're going to get the benefits, somehow you're going to get the benefits. It's very simple. People read our books because they're kind of happier. But the second thing, and one thing very basic, it qualitative the argument hope to a very great extent. There are only two things you have to see over here. Firstly, our arguments on microachievements. Realize that even books, people hear that Voldemort is evil, people realize that Big Brother is evil. They don't really need a reminder for the same. The issue is when, let's say, evil people's actions are carried out day in and day in front of your eyes. For example, when you see black people being arrested on the street day in and day out, it becomes normalized in your head. When you hear another news that, oh, a black man was arrested, there's something normal to you. So repetition makes things normal. That's our only argument. Where tell us is you recognize that things are good or bad. Yeah, you do that on either word. It's just that when you see bad things happening too often, that's what we expect of a status quo. Then, they ignore our entire majority. And this is very crucial, the very crucial link over here is when you see good things happening, when you see, let's say, people being treated with respect and kindness, when you see people be respected, let's say, with equality, let's say in the first speech itself. And once again, the same thing becomes normalized for you. The only difference here is that now probably instead of saying that, okay, look, these people have been dehumanized so much, you don't necessarily see any microaggression on your part of the really big slide. On the other hand, you probably see that as bigger slide on our side. And that's the only marginal difference in this debate. On our side, people just gradually shift towards a more hopeful world, gradually kind of realize whether actions are shitty or not. On their part, you don't necessarily get a hero, you don't necessarily get a happy ending, you don't necessarily mechanize you why that people become heroes on their own. They kind of just live a sad world where people don't read their books.